Commander Vextal's third eye twitched as he reviewed the morning patrol reports aboard the hegemony dreadnought Sovereign's Might. Another routine sweep of the outer rim sectors, another day of finding nothing but empty space and dead rocks. The Kepler system had been marked as a stellar graveyard for over 2 centuries. No habitable worlds, no resources worth mining, no reason for any intelligent species to venture there. His scaled fingers drummed against the command console as the massive warship glided through the void. The Sovereign's Might was a testament to hegemony engineering. 3 kilometers of pristine white hull plating, energy shields that could withstand supernova radiation, and weapons capable of cracking moons. It represented 5,000 years of mathematical perfection and technological advancement. "Sir, we're picking up some unusual readings," called Sensor Officer Krelvani from her station. Her forearms danced across holographic displays as streams of data flowed past her compound eyes. "There's something in grid 77 Alpha." Vextal's mandibles clicked with mild irritation. "Define something, officer." "That's just it, sir, I can't." Krelvani's voice carried a note of confusion that made Vextal's dorsal spines rise. She had been analyzing sensor data for 30 years and had never sounded uncertain about anything. "The readings don't match any known technology in our database. Energy signatures are off the scale, but they're wrong somehow." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Vextal rose from his command throne, his towering frame casting shadows across the pristine deck. "Show me." The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a 3-dimensional, tactical map of the surrounding space. At first, everything appeared normal. The familiar patterns of background radiation, cosmic dust, and distant stellar bodies. Then Krelvani highlighted the anomaly. A pulsing red indicator appeared in what should have been empty space. The energy readings made no sense. The signature suggested a massive power core, but it was generating energy through unknown means. Worse, the readings seemed to fluctuate in ways that violated basic thermodynamics. "Distance?" Vextal asked. "Approximately 50,000 kilometers, bearing mark 70, replied Navigation Officer Thekmar. "But, sir, there's nothing there. Visual sensors show empty space." Vextal's mind raced through possibilities. Cloaked vessels were common enough, but even the most advanced stealth technology left traces. This was different. It was as if something massive existed in that location, while simultaneously not existing at all. "All stop," he commanded. "Bring us to tactical alert status. Helm, adjust course to intercept the anomaly." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Vextal could sense their unease. He had served alongside these officers for decades, and they had faced everything from space pirates to rogue artificial intelligences. None of them had ever encountered readings like this. As the Sovereign's Might approached the coordinates, reality seemed to shimmer. The stars in the view screen wavered like reflections on disturbed water. Then, without warning, space folded in on itself, and something impossible appeared before them. The vessel that materialized defied every principle of engineering Vextal had ever learned. It was roughly cylindrical, perhaps 800 meters long, but its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The surface wasn't simply black. It was an absence, as if pieces of the universe had been carefully cut away and replaced with nothing. More disturbing still, space itself bent around the ship's hull. Stars visible behind it appeared distorted, stretched and compressed in ways that made his eyes ache to look at. The vessel seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its edges blurring into probability rather than solid matter. "By the ancients," whispered Tactical Officer Zargeth, "what is that thing?" Energy readings spiked beyond the sensor's ability to measure. The alien ship pulsed with power that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Vextal's training screamed that such technology was impossible, yet the evidence hung in space before him. "Sir, should we hail them?" asked Communications Officer Velran, her voice barely above a whisper. Vextal nodded slowly, never taking his eyes off the impossible vessel. "Open a channel. Use standard first contact protocols." Velran's tentacles worked frantically at her console. "Channel open, sir." "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Vextal of the Hegemony Patrol Fleet aboard the dreadnought Sovereign's Might. Please identify yourself and state your intentions in this sector. For a moment, only the static of cosmic background radiation answered them. Then a voice filled the bridge, calm, confident, and speaking perfect hegemony standard, with an accent Vextal couldn't place. Greetings, Commander Vextal. This is Captain Hansol of the Korean Federation vessel, Taeguk. We appreciate your professional courtesy. For the safety of both our crews, we respectfully request you maintain your current distance. The bridge erupted in quiet chaos as officers exchanged glances and whispered consultations. Korean Federation. No such political entity existed in any hegemony database. The voice sounded organic, not artificial, but what species could have developed technology so far beyond their own? Junior Officer Rakmel, barely out of the academy and eager to prove himself, leaned over his console with wide eyes. Sir, I'm reading massive power fluctuations in their weapon systems. Should I lock our targeting computers onto them as a precautionary measure? Before Vextal could respond, Rakmel's inexperienced fingers had already initiated the weapons lock sequence. The Sovereign's Might's targeting sensors reached out toward the alien vessel, painting it with scanning beams. The response was immediate and impossible. Reality folded, not twisted or bent, folded, like origami made from the fabric of space-time, itself. The alien ship didn't move through space. Instead, space moved around it. In the span of a heartbeat, the vessel simply ceased to exist in their local reference frame. Sensors showed nothing. Visual confirmed empty space. Yet somehow, Vextal could still feel the presence of something vast and patient, watching them from dimensions his mind couldn't comprehend. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Vextal stared at the empty space where the impossible ship had been, his heart's hammering against his ribs. In 40 years of military service, he had never encountered anything that challenged his understanding of reality so completely. What kind of species could build vessels that existed outside the normal laws of physics? What did they want? And, most terrifying of all, if this was just one ship, what else was out there in the darkness between stars? Dr. Kelvani's compound eyes burned from staring at the holographic displays for 6 straight hours. Her forearms moved frantically across multiple data terminals as she ran the sensor readings through every analysis program in the hegemony database. Each time the results came back the same: impossible. Kethra, come look at this, she called. To her assistant, her mandibles chattering with nervous energy, the young scientist hurried over, his scales still bright with the colors of academic inexperience. What are we looking at, Doctor? Kethra asked, squinting at the swirling data. Patterns. Either the greatest hoax in galactic history or technology that breaks every law of physics we've spent 5 millennia discovering. Chelvani highlighted specific readings with her lower left arm, while gesturing emphatically with her right. Look at these power output measurements. This vessel is generating energy equivalent to a small star, but there's no fusion signature, no antimatter annihilation, no zero-point extraction, nothing we can identify. Kethra leaned closer, his head tentacles twitching with concentration. Perhaps their containment systems are simply beyond our sensor capabilities? That's what I thought initially. Chelvani pulled up another display showing the vessel's structural analysis. But then I examined their hull composition. According to these readings, their ship is made of materials that exist in quantum superposition, simultaneously solid and liquid, matter and energy, present and absent. It's as if they've built their entire vessel out of Schrödinger's paradox. The implications sent chills through both scientists. The hegemony had conquered half the galaxy through technological superiority. Their ships were marvels of engineering precision, their weapons calculated to surgical perfection, their shields designed through mathematical models that had never failed. The idea that some unknown species had developed technology so far beyond their understanding challenged everything they believed about civilization and progress. Meanwhile, 300 light-years away, Captain Hansol sat in his ready room, aboard the Taeguk, dictating his encounter report to Earth Command. The walls around him pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to breathe with the ship itself. Personal log, stardate 23/87/156. We've made contact with what appears to be a hegemony patrol vessel. Standard first contact protocols were observed, though their junior officer attempted to lock weapons onto our position. I've withdrawn the Teguk to a safe distance to avoid any further misunderstandings. He paused, listening to the unique sounds of his ship. Unlike the sterile hum of conventional starships, the Teguk seemed alive. Quantum processors whispered to each other in languages that existed only in probability space. The hull plates shifted subtly as they adjusted to local space-time fluctuations. Even the air recycling system worked by convincing oxygen molecules that they preferred to exist in the ship's atmosphere rather than the vacuum of space. The door chimed, and Chief Engineer Kim Yoo-jin entered. Her work uniform was covered in stains that changed color depending on the angle of observation, byproducts of working with materials that didn't quite exist in normal reality. "Captain, we've got a small problem with the singularity drive," she reported, though her tone suggested it wasn't particularly urgent. Han Sol raised an eyebrow. "Define small problem when discussing a contained black hole." Yoo-jin grinned and pulled out a tablet, displaying the drive's status. "The little guy is getting lonely again. It keeps trying to merge with the coffee maker in Mess Hall 3. I've had to relocate it to Engineering Subsection 12 to keep it happy." This was the reality of human engineering that would have given hegemony scientists nightmares. While other species built their technology through careful mathematical models and precise specifications, humans had taken a completely different approach. They had learned to negotiate with physics rather than simply obey it. The Teguk's singularity drive didn't contain a black hole through conventional force fields and exotic matter. Instead, it maintained an ongoing conversation with the event horizon, convincing it that existing in a stable state was more interesting than collapsing into catastrophic destruction. The singularity had developed something resembling personality quirks over the years, occasionally demanding to be moved to different parts of the ship or insisting on specific quantum frequencies for its containment field. "How's our navigation system handling the local space-time distortions?" Han Sol asked. "Beautifully," Yoo-jin replied, her eyes lighting up with professional pride. "We're riding probability waves like a surfer on an ocean. The quantum uncertainty engine is mapping potential futures in real time, and our pilot AI is following the path of least paradox to our destination." While hegemony ships calculated precise hyperspace coordinates and jumped from point A to point B with mathematical certainty, the Teguk traveled by exploring the space between possibilities. Their navigation computer didn't plot courses, it dreamed them. The ship would exist in multiple locations simultaneously until the crew observed their position, at which point quantum mechanics would collapse their location into whichever destination seemed most convenient. The bridge door slid open and Lieutenant So-young entered, her movements graceful despite the gravitational anomalies that surrounded the weapons console. "Captain, the gravity cannons are fully charged and ready for deployment. I've also finished calibrating the reality anchors in case we need to stabilize local spacetime." Han Sol nodded approvingly. The Teguk's weapons systems were perhaps the most disturbing example of human engineering philosophy. Instead of firing energy beams or projectiles, their gravity cannons launched concentrated distortions in space-time itself. A single shot could make an enemy vessel experience time dilation, causing their crew to age decades in seconds. Another setting could convince matter that it preferred to exist as energy, resulting in spontaneous conversion without the mess of nuclear reactions. The reality anchors were an even more exotic system. In situations where local physics became too unstable, usually after extended combat, or when traveling through regions where multiple dimensions intersected, the anchors could establish a bubble of normal space-time around the ship. They worked by appealing to the universe's apparent preference for consistency, though the exact mechanism involved mathematics that could only be expressed in imaginary numbers. "Any word from the science teams about our new neighbors?" So-young asked. Yoo-jin consulted her tablet again. "Dr. Park Min-ho in xenobiology thinks they're carbon-based with silicon enhancement. Pretty standard for this region of space. But Dr. Lee Subin in psychology is fascinated by their social structure. Apparently they have a rigid hierarchy based on mathematical principles. Every decision gets calculated through probability matrices before implementation. Han Sol found this amusing. Humans had tried that approach centuries ago during the early days of artificial intelligence development. Computer models had suggested that humanity would never develop faster than light travel, would never solve the energy crisis, and would never achieve interstellar colonization. Instead of accepting these limitations, humans had simply decided that mathematical models were more like guidelines than absolute rules. The result was ships like the Taeguk, vessels that existed in controlled impossibility, held together by human stubbornness and engineering principles that made theoretical physicists weep. Every system aboard the ship violated some fundamental law of science, yet somehow everything worked together in harmonious chaos. As if to demonstrate this point, the ship's AI spoke up in its distinctly human voice. "Captain, I've been analyzing the quantum resonance patterns from our encounter with the hegemony vessel. Their technology is impressive within conventional parameters, but they seem to be locked into purely mathematical approaches to problem solving. I estimate a 97% probability that they cannot comprehend our engineering methods." Han Sol smiled. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but humans had learned something that apparently no other species had discovered. Sometimes the impossible was just another word for solutions that hadn't been tried yet. Admiral Morkash stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his scaled fists clenched behind his back as he watched three massive hegemony dreadnoughts form an attack formation. Each vessel stretched over 4 kilometers in length, bristling with enough firepower to reduce entire moons to cosmic dust. Their hulls gleamed with mathematical perfection, every angle calculated for maximum efficiency, every weapon placement optimized through 5,000 years of warfare experience. "Sir, we're detecting the human vessel on long-range sensors," reported Tactical Officer Vrenkal. "It appears to be waiting for us." Morkash's 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. The alien ship hung motionless in the void, making no attempt to flee or hide. Its dark hull seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars, creating a hole in space that hurt to look at directly. "Arrogant creatures," he muttered. "They think their parlor tricks can intimidate the hegemony navy." Commander Zekrin approached from the communications station, his expression troubled. "Admiral, perhaps we should consider a more diplomatic approach. The sensor readings from Commander Vextal's encounter suggest their technology is beyond our current understanding." Morkash turned his massive head toward his subordinate, his neck spines flaring with irritation. 40 years I've served the hegemony, Commander. I've seen asteroid miners with jury-rigged plasma cannons claim they had advanced technology. I've watched smugglers use holographic projectors to make their cargo haulers look like battleships. This is just another primitive species trying to bluff their way out of proper inspection. The fleet continued its approach, sensors scanning continuously. The human vessel remained perfectly still, not even rotating to track their movement. It was as if the ship were completely unaware of the 3 dreadnoughts bearing down on it. "Range?" Morkash demanded. 100,000 kilometers and closing," replied Navigation Officer Kethmol. "All ships report ready for combat operations." Morkash activated his fleet communication system. "Attention, alien vessel. This is Admiral Morkash of the Hegemony Third Fleet. You are in violation of galactic law by possessing technology that has not been approved by the Hegemony Science Council. Surrender your vessel for immediate inspection and transfer of all technological data." The response came almost immediately, broadcast on an open channel with crisp audio quality that made hegemony communications seem primitive by comparison. "Greetings, Admiral Morkash. This is Captain Han Sol of the Korean Federation vessel Taeguk. We appreciate your position, but we must respectfully decline your request. Our technology represents thousands of years of human development and is not subject to hegemony jurisdiction." The bridge fell silent. No species had ever refused a direct order from a hegemony admiral. The very concept seemed to short-circuit the crew's understanding of how galactic politics worked. Morkash's neck spines fully extended with rage. "You dare refuse the hegemony? Your pathetic little ship against 3 of our finest dreadnoughts?" Admiral, Captain Hansol's voice remained infuriatingly calm. We have no desire for conflict. We simply wish to continue our peaceful exploration mission. Perhaps we could arrange a cultural exchange instead. Our diplomats would be happy to meet with yours at a neutral location. The time for diplomacy has passed, Morkash snarled. Weapons Officer Thekva, prepare a warning shot. Target their forward section with minimum power, just enough to disable their engines. Thekva's claws danced over his control console. Plasma Cannon 1 charged and ready, Admiral. Firing solution locked. Fire. A brilliant green beam lanced out from the Eternal Dominion's primary weapon array. The plasma bolt contained enough energy to vaporize a small asteroid, carefully modulated to disable rather than destroy. It struck the human vessel's projected location with perfect accuracy and passed harmlessly through empty space. What? Morkash's voice cracked with confusion. Thekva, did you miss? Impossible, sir. The targeting computer confirmed a direct hit. But sensors show no impact, no energy discharge, nothing. On the view screen, the human ship flickered like a mirage. For just a moment, its dark hull became translucent, revealing the stars behind it. Then it solidified again, exactly where it had been before. Commander Zekrin studied his instruments with growing alarm. Admiral, I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations around their position. They're not just using optical camouflage, they're existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. We were firing at a probability shadow, not the actual vessel. Morkash felt his confidence beginning to crack. Holographic projections he could understand. Advanced cloaking technology was within the realm of possibility. But weapons that fired can't probability shadows while the target existed in parallel dimensions. That suggested an understanding of physics so far beyond hegemony science that it might as well be magic. Sir, Thekva reported, his voice tight with professional concern, the human vessel is powering up what appears to be a weapon system. Energy readings are unprecedented. The Teguk made no threatening moves. It didn't rotate to bring weapons to bear or accelerate toward the hegemony fleet. Instead, space around the human ship began to shimmer with patterns that made Morkash's eyes water. Reality itself seemed to ripple outward from the vessel like waves on a pond. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Morkash commanded. Maximum power to shields. The human response wasn't a conventional weapon. No energy beam, no projectile, no explosive warhead. Instead, something far more terrifying reached out and touched the minds of every crew member in the hegemony fleet. For exactly 3 seconds, every living being aboard the 3 dreadnoughts experienced the heat death of the universe. Morkash watched in absolute horror as every star in the galaxy burned out simultaneously. The last red dwarf flickered and died, leaving only darkness. Planets froze solid, their atmospheres crystallizing and falling as snow. Black holes evaporated through Hawking radiation until even they were gone. The universe reached maximum entropy, cold, dark, and utterly lifeless. He felt his own body temperature dropping as the cosmic background radiation faded to nothing. His heart slowed as the fundamental forces of physics wound down like clockwork toys running out of spring tension. The last proton in existence decayed, leaving behind only empty space expanding forever into infinite coldness. And then, like waking from a nightmare, reality snapped back to normal. Morkash found himself gasping on the bridge of his dreadnought, surrounded by equally terrified crew members. Some were weeping openly, others sat in stunned silence, staring at their instruments as if they couldn't quite believe the readings were real. Report, he croaked, his voice barely audible. All systems normal, Thekvar managed to whisper. No damage to any vessel. But, sir, what we just experienced, the sensors recorded it all. For 3 seconds, the universe actually did end, and somehow they brought it back. Morkash's hands trembled as he stared at the human vessel, which continued to hang motionless in space, as if nothing had happened. Captain Hansol's voice filled the bridge again, still maddeningly polite. Admiral, we hope this demonstration has clarified our position. The Teguk is equipped with defensive systems designed to protect against all forms of aggression, including those that haven't been invented yet. We have no desire to harm anyone, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Perhaps we could discuss this situation more reasonably. For the first time in his 40-year career, Admiral Morkash had encountered something that made him question everything he thought he knew about power, technology, and humanity's place in the universe. These weren't primitive aliens with clever tricks. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had learned to weaponize the fundamental laws of reality itself. The worst part was knowing that what they'd just experienced wasn't an attack. It was a gentle warning, delivered with the same polite professionalism as a diplomatic note. If humans could make 3 dreadnoughts experience the end of everything as a demonstration of restraint, what could they do if they actually decided to fight? The hegemony's mightiest battle fleet had assembled in the outer rim of the Kepler system, 50 warships representing the accumulated military might of 1,000 worlds. Dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, and heavy destroyers formed a perfect sphere around the lone human vessel, their weapons trained on the Teguk like the spines of some massive space creature. Admiral Morkash stood on the bridge of his flagship, Galactic Supremacy, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Each red dot represented enough firepower to level continents. Together, they could reduce entire moons to vapor. Surely no single vessel, regardless of its strange technology, could withstand such overwhelming force. Fleet status report. He commanded, his voice echoing through the communication channels to all 50 ships. "All vessels report ready for combat operations," replied Fleet Coordinator Vexthul. "Combined energy output measures at 47 terawatts per second. Kinetic bombardment systems loaded with depleted uranium cores. Plasma torpedo batteries standing by with maximum yield warheads." In the center of this devastating formation, the Teguk hung motionless in space. Its dark hull still seemed to absorb light from the surrounding stars, creating a patch of deeper darkness against the cosmic background. To the hegemony sensors, it appeared completely defenseless. No raised shields, no weapon systems charging, no attempt to maneuver out of the trap. But aboard the human vessel, Captain Hansol was making final preparations for what he hoped wouldn't become necessary. He moved through the ship's corridors, past bulkheads that hummed with contained energy, and crew members who worked with quiet efficiency despite the overwhelming odds they faced. "Captain," called Lieutenant Park Dong-wook from the tactical station, "the hegemony fleet has us completely surrounded. 50 ships, sir. Our long-range sensors detect enough firepower to sterilize an entire solar system." Hansol nodded calmly. "Any word from Earth Command?" "Admiral Kim Hee-jin sends her regards," reported Communications Officer Lee Min-seo. "She says, and I quote, 'Show them what human engineering can really do.'" A slight smile crossed Hansol's face. "Very well. Open a channel to the hegemony fleet." His voice broadcast across all frequencies, reaching every ship in the enemy formation. "Admiral Morkash, this is Captain Hansol. I want to make one final appeal for reason. The Korean Federation has no territorial ambitions in this region. We're simply explorers, seeking to understand the universe and our place in it. We don't seek conflict with the hegemony or any other species." The response came immediately, filled with righteous anger and wounded pride. "You humiliated my fleet, human. You made my crews experience the death of reality itself. No species challenges the hegemony and lives to tell about it." "Admiral," Hansol continued, his tone remaining patient despite the circumstances, "what you experienced was a defensive demonstration, nothing more. We have no desire to harm you or your people, but we won't be intimidated or forced to surrender our technology to anyone." "Your words mean nothing," Morkash snarled. 50 ships against 1. Surrender now, and I might allow your crew to live as research subjects." Down in engineering, Chief Engineer Kim Yoo-jin was making final adjustments to systems that would have given hegemony scientists nightmares. Her hands moved across control surfaces that existed in quantum superposition, adjusting parameters for equipment that operated on principles barely understood even by their human creators. "How are we looking, Yoo-jin?" asked Assistant Engineer O.J. Sung, monitoring the ship's power distribution systems. Like a spring coiled to its breaking point, she replied with a grin that suggested she was looking forward to what came next. "The metamorphic hull plating is ready to begin adaptive reconfiguration. Quantum energy converters are operating at optimal efficiency. and the reality stabilizers are prepared to handle some truly spectacular physics violations. What about the crew? Can our bodies handle what's about to happen? Eugene's grin widened. That's the beautiful part about human engineering, Jae-sung. We don't just build ships that can survive the impossible, we build them so that impossibility becomes survivable. Back on the bridge, Han Sol could see that diplomacy had failed. The hegemony fleet was moving into final attack position, weapons charged and targeting systems locked. He activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. Secure all stations and prepare for combat operations. Remember, we're not fighting to destroy. We're fighting to survive and to show the galaxy that there's always another way. Admiral Morkash's voice boomed across the communication channels one final time. Last chance, human. Surrender or be destroyed. Han Sol's response was quiet but carried the weight of absolute determination. We respectfully decline, Admiral. All ships, Morkash roared. Fire! The space around the Taeguk exploded into a hellish light show as 50 warships unleashed their full destructive potential simultaneously. Plasma cannons fired concentrated streams of stellar core temperatures. Kinetic bombardment systems launched projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Energy beams hot enough to melt asteroids converged on the human vessel from every direction. Any normal ship would have been vaporized in the first microsecond of the barrage. The combined firepower was enough to crack continents, boil oceans, and turn solid matter into its component atoms. The energy release was so intense that nearby space debris began to glow from residual radiation. But the Taeguk didn't explode. It didn't even try to dodge. Instead, something unprecedented happened. The human vessel began to grow. Every energy beam that struck its hull was absorbed rather than deflected. Plasma bolts that should have punched through the ship's structure were converted into additional mass. Kinetic projectiles slammed into the hull and were somehow transformed into expanded armor plating. "What is happening?" screamed Navigation Officer Kethmol aboard the Galactic Supremacy. "Our weapons are making it stronger." The Taeguk pulsed with each incoming shot, its hull expanding like a living thing feeding on energy. Within minutes, the vessel had doubled in size. Within 10 minutes, it had tripled. The dark hull plates shifted and flowed like liquid metal, growing new sections and extensions as they absorbed the continued bombardment. "Impossible!" Admiral Morkash's voice cracked with disbelief. "Nothing can feed on weapons fire. Physics doesn't work that way." Down in the Taeguk's engineering, Section Eugene was monitoring the ship's metamorphic systems with professional fascination. "Beautiful," she murmured, watching energy conversion rates that violated several fundamental laws of thermodynamics. "Absolutely beautiful." "How is this possible?" asked Jae-sung, staring at readings that suggested their ship was somehow creating matter from pure energy while maintaining perfect structural integrity. "Remember your basic human engineering philosophy," Eugene replied, her hands dancing across controls that guided the ship's continued growth. "Other species see problems and try to overcome them. We see problems and ask, how can we make this work for us instead? Those hegemony ships aren't attacking us, they're powering our upgrade." The Taeguk had grown to 3 times its original size and showed no signs of stopping. Worse still, from the hegemony perspective, the ship's power output was increasing exponentially. Energy readings spiked beyond their sensors' ability to measure. The vessel's gravitational field had become so intense that nearby asteroids were being pulled into orbit around it. "All ships cease fire," Morkash commanded, but it was too late. The Taeguk had become something far beyond their ability to comprehend or combat. It hung in space like a miniature black hole made of crystallized impossibility, radiating power that made the surrounding space ripple with quantum distortions. Captain Han Sol's voice filled the communication channels once, more still maddeningly calm, despite commanding a vessel that had just violated every known law of physics. "Admiral Morkash, I believe we've demonstrated that aggression against human vessels is counterproductive. Perhaps now we can discuss this situation like civilized beings. For the first time in hegemony history, an entire battle fleet found itself completely outmatched by a single enemy vessel. The worst part was knowing that the humans had achieved this, not through superior weapons or advanced shields, but by turning the hegemony's own attack into an upgrade system. Morkash stared at his instruments, watching readings that suggested the human ship could now casually destroy his entire fleet with a thought. The question that terrified him most wasn't what these humans wanted. It was what other impossible technologies they might be hiding throughout their space. The Taeguk had become something beyond recognition. What started as an 800-meter exploration vessel now stretched across 3 kilometers of space, its hull pulsing with absorbed energy from 50 hegemony warships. Reality bent around the ship like heated glass, creating ripples in space-time that made nearby stars appear to dance in slow motion. Captain Han Sol stood on the bridge, feeling the raw power coursing through every deck plate beneath his feet. The ship's AI whispered constant updates about energy levels that had surpassed anything in recorded galactic history. They now possessed enough accumulated force to crack moons, boil atmospheres, or reduce entire fleets to cosmic dust with a single thought. "Captain," reported Lieutenant So Young from the weapons station, her voice tight with barely controlled awe, "all systems are operating at maximum capacity. The gravity cannons alone could destabilize local spacetime. We're reading power levels equivalent to a stellar core." Through the viewscreen, Han Sol watched the hegemony fleet maintaining their positions around his ship. 50 vessels hung motionless in space, their crews undoubtedly staring at sensor readings that defied every principle of physics they'd ever learned. He could end this confrontation in seconds. One pulse from their enhanced systems would reduce Admiral Morkash and his entire battle group to scattered atoms. But that wasn't why humans had built the Taeguk. "Engineering, report on crew safety parameters," Han Sol requested. Chief Engineer Kim Yoo-jin's voice came through the intercom, filled with professional excitement despite their circumstances. "All crew members are secure, Captain. The ship's biometric systems show everyone's adapting well to our enhanced operational status. Dr. Choi Jin-ho in medical reports that the increased energy field is actually improving cellular regeneration, rates among the crew, and the hegemony fleet." "Interesting question, sir. Our sensors indicate significant stress fractures in their hull plating from the energy discharge of their own weapons. Several ships show signs of radiation exposure among their crews. Standard military vessels aren't designed to handle the kind of sustained bombardment they just unleashed." Han Sol nodded thoughtfully. The hegemony had hurt themselves more than they'd hurt the Taeguk. Their own aggression had become their weakness, while empowering the very enemy they'd tried to destroy. It was a perfect example of the fundamental difference between human and alien thinking. "Captain," interrupted Communications Officer Lee, "Min Seo, Admiral Morkash is requesting to speak with you directly. His transmission is different than before." "How so?" "No demands, no threats. He sounds—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Frightened, sir." Han Sol wasn't surprised. Fear was a reasonable response when facing technology that operated outside known scientific principles. But fear also created opportunities for understanding. If handled correctly, open the channel. Admiral Morkash's image appeared on the main view screen. The proud military commander who had led 50 ships into battle looked haggard, his scaled features showing exhaustion and confusion. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its earlier arrogance. "Captain Han Sol, your vessel now possesses enough power to destroy my entire fleet. You could sterilize this entire system if you chose. I must ask your intentions." Han Sol considered his response carefully. This moment would define not just the outcome of their encounter, but humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. Every word would be analyzed, recorded, and studied by xenopolitical experts across dozens of species. "Admiral, you're correct that the Taeguk has accumulated significant energy, but I think you misunderstand our purpose." "Here." "Your purpose?" Morkash's mandibles clicked with nervous energy. "You've demonstrated technology beyond our comprehension. You've shown that our most powerful weapons only make you stronger. What purpose could there be except conquest?" "That's exactly the thinking we're trying to change," Han Sol replied. "Admiral, what if I told you that humans didn't build ships like the Taeguk to dominate other species? What if our entire approach to technology was designed around a completely different philosophy? On the bridge, Lieutenant Park Dong-wook monitored the tactical situation while listening to the conversation. "Captain, quantum field fluctuations are stabilizing. We could begin energy discharge procedures whenever you're ready." Hansol nodded, then addressed the Hegemony Admiral again. "Morkash, I'm going to do something that I hope will demonstrate what humans are really about, but I need you to trust me for the next few minutes." "Trust?" The alien commander's voice cracked. "You have enough power to obliterate us all." "Which is exactly why trust matters," Hansol said quietly. "Yujin, initiate controlled energy discharge. Target all hegemony vessels simultaneously, but route the power through the medical and repair systems." "Understood, Captain. Beginning discharge in 10 seconds. The Taeguk began to glow with internal light as massive amounts of accumulated energy flowed through its hull. But instead of channeling the power into weapon systems, the ship's computers directed every joule toward its most sophisticated subsystems, the ones designed to heal rather than harm. A brilliant wave of golden energy erupted from the human vessel, washing over the entire hegemony fleet in seconds. Admiral Morkash braced for destruction, certain that his 40-year military career was about to end in nuclear fire. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy wave passed through the hegemony ships like warm sunlight, penetrating their hulls without causing any structural damage. But as it flowed through each vessel, the wave began repairing systems, healing injured crew members and upgrading technology with improvements that would have taken hegemony scientists decades to develop. Aboard the Galactic Supremacy, Morkash watched in amazement as hull fractures sealed themselves. Damaged equipment restored itself to perfect working order, and his ship's power output increased by 30%. Medical stations throughout the fleet reported that crew members suffering from radiation exposure were completely healed within minutes. "Impossible," he whispered, staring at readouts that showed his dreadnought was now more advanced than when it had left the shipyard. "Why would you? How could you?" Hansol's voice filled the bridge, warm and patient. "Because that's what humans do, Admiral. We don't see enemies to be destroyed. We see problems to be solved. Your ships were damaged by your own weapons fire, so we fixed them. Your crews were injured by radiation exposure, so we healed them. Your technology was limited by conventional thinking, so we shared better approaches." Throughout the hegemony fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Engineers stared at improved reactor designs that appeared in their computer systems. Medical officers found cures for diseases that had plagued their species for centuries. Tactical officers discovered new defensive systems that could protect their ships without harming others. "But why?" Morkash's voice was barely audible. "We attacked you. We tried to destroy you. By every law of warfare, you should have retaliated." "That's exactly the point," Hansol replied. "Humans learned long ago that retaliation just creates more problems. Instead, we ask a different question. How can we turn this conflict into an opportunity for everyone to benefit?" The Taeguk had returned to its original size, the accumulated energy now distributed throughout the hegemony fleet in the form of improvements, healing, and technological upgrades. What had been a confrontation between enemies had become the largest peaceful technology transfer in galactic history. "I don't understand your species," Admiral Morkash admitted. "You have the power to conquer, but you choose to heal. You could dominate, but you prefer to share. This challenges everything the hegemony believes about strength and survival." "Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs," Hansol suggested. "A different way of thinking about strength. Humans learned that true power isn't the ability to destroy your enemies. It's the ability to turn them into friends." As word of the encounter spread throughout hegemony space and beyond, the galaxy began to realize that humanity represented something entirely new. Not just another technological civilization, but a species that had learned to weaponize compassion, to militarize healing, and to turn the fundamental assumptions of galactic politics upside down. The first peaceful contact protocols between species were established that day. As representatives from dozens of civilizations requested meetings with these strange humans, who had proven that sometimes the most revolutionary act was simply choosing to help instead of harm. In the years that followed, the encounter at Kepler would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy learned that there was always another way, and that sometimes the most terrifying power was the courage to use it for good. The end.